Professor, the gentleman can start.
Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. I'm Jennifer De La Cruz, the Art and Student Activities Chair, and good afternoon, good evening to all our guests, participants in and outside Region 10, and the vibrant organizers of R10 Talk webinar series. Well, allow me to welcome you to another much-awaited R10 Talk, and this is actually the fourth of the series entitled Quantum Encryption, Overview, Uses, and Adaptation. So to share to you more about this new initiative of Region 10 in achieving excellence through gaining and sharing knowledge, let me call the R10 Women in Engineering Chair to give her welcome address and introduce our distinguished speaker for today. Everyone, let us all welcome Ms. Emmy Yano.
Thank you, Prof. Jen. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I am Emiliano, Region 10 WA Chair. I'd like to appreciate all those who have taken the time to attend today's webinar. Today, as our fourth 10 Talk, we are very pleased to welcome female cybersecurity practitioner, Ms. Saritha N to speak of the topics of quantum encryption, overview, use case, and adoption. She is our first female speaker of TED Talk. I'd like to express my thanks to Ms. Sarita and Oti. And IEEE Region 10 Talk is a joint endeavor of Region 10 Industry Relation Committee, Professional Activity Committee, Young Professional Committee, Women in Engineering Committee, and Student Activity Committee, focusing on enhancing the awareness of trending the topics of the community. In the society in which all manner of things are connected to the internet, and the real world and the cyber world are become blended. So addressing cybersecurity is a social requirement and a must. Cybersecurity is a key issue in the DX era. And we are now living in a VUCA world, and it is still hard situation of COVID-19. However, there are many participants here today, including student members, young professionals, and women engineers. I am very happy to know you are always running, expanding connection, and taking action for the future. Okay, let me introduce the Miss Sarita N. She is currently working as Global CISO, UD Tracks, and the executive board member of Palo Alto Networks. She is also worked with the government of India to devise NCIPC guidelines, represented India in ISO study groups, worked with ISACA, DSCI, and worked with Tel Aviv University's Incubation Center to evaluate the cybersecurity innovations. She is performed various roles as a cybersecurity business leader, the Corporate Information Security Officer, and the Cybersecurity Program Architect for the Business Transformation Programs. She has set up enterprise and industry security operations, introduced automation in the security operation and the incident response, set up cybersecurity architectures, centers of excellence. She's also worked executively in the telecom sector for OSS security, secure CRM, and subscription management, and the secure customer registration journey, oil and gas sector to create security solutions for OT transformation, consolidation of security deployment across various brands, supply chain security, retail sector for omni-channel security, customer identity management, secure subscription management, warehouse management, distribution management, and development cybersecurity of core banking system, retail banking, and the setup security operation in sourcing of security programs of defense sector for logistics and warehouse security, automation of secure testing of component entity analytics. She's the co-patent owner of the threat intelligence solution with Infosys. Apart from cybersecurity, she is engaged in enabling the lesser privileged children with education, tricking, photography, and chess. Okay, Miss Oti, now over to you. Thank you.
So much. First, I want to thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to speak in this forum. Sanjay sir, thank you so much. And I also enjoy the privilege of being a first woman speaker, and thank you so much for that. I will speak about my experiences, the way we have done encryption and how we are moving to quantum, and open for any questions because I come from the engineering and technical background. So maybe I hope I will be able to answer all the technical questions in this regard. And thank you so much. I will go ahead and share the presentation because that presentation is just as a reference for you to see when I speak, but more about I will be speaking much more than the words what I have put in the presentation. If we have any questions during the session, I think you can put your questions on the chat window and I will answer. I will answer all of them. So let me share my screen. Let me know if it is visible.
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Let me just start. So I just had one slide about my introduction. I'm skipping that slide. So today we are talking about quantum encryption, right? So the first ever reference to quantum encryption or quantum computing and then quantum encryption was as old as 1968 by Stefan Weissner. So that it's as old as that. But today we are talking because there is an urgency to shift our encryption method from the digital ciphers to quantum encryption. We will talk about each of these points in detail. So why that urgency has arisen, right? So last few months, or I would say last 2 months, it's been very visible. But otherwise, even last during the pandemic, that is about now 14 months or so, you've seen so many large scale attacks. And these attacks are, if you look at the attacks, right, these attacks have been there and it's happening and it's not known. There are a lot of security monitoring happening, vulnerability analysis happening, but still it is not known, right? Why is that? So we'll talk about. So these are the context why it becomes very strong case for quantum encryption to be deployed. We'll also talk about the threats which quantum computing is introducing into our business. So quantum encryption, quantum computing is always a double-edged sword. So we'll talk about that. Whatever it is inevitable. We have to march towards quantum encryption from the standard ones. Even after doing all those things, it's not guaranteed that environment will be safe and secure. We'll also talk about these points. So let me talk about specific two scenarios of last 2 months, right? You might have heard about SolarWinds breach. You might have heard about the this recent breach, right? The what is that? Colonial pipes. So you might have heard about colonial pipes also. So I'll be actually talking about one of these breaches in the end in detail, but at a very high level, right? These both hacks involved insertion of malicious code by nation state attackers into the environment. And it was unnoticed. It was unnoticed, and the scale and sophistication of this malware. So these scripts are called malwares. These are like it literally blindsided the government and agencies and the IT department or the security department and it was just all over the place. So for us, what was visible for cybersecurity professionals like me, right? We were worried when we looked at this incident. Colonial Pipes, for example, it was spanning a distance of uh, about 500 miles. That is about, I think, 850 kilometers or something. And it was also it was a major pipeline link to supply gasoline to the eastern coast of US. And if this so what these hacks mean to the business? Let's not talk about security for a minute. What these hacks mean to the business, right? It is actually the disruption. It is actually to ensure that there is a threat to the lives of people. There is a threat to the business. There is a threat to the nation. So these are all attacks which are sponsored by other countries. They're called nation state attacks, and these are the ones most sophisticated weapons. I would call really refer them as a third world war, which is happening in the form of weaponized malwares and weaponized bioviruses, right? So that is what is happening across us and around us, and we see that. So now there were encryption. Colonial Pipes, they had RSA encryption, they had triple disk encryption, the standard methods of encryption. So why still this has happened, right? So these encryptions are the older methods or the traditional methods which we are using today. If you refer them to in the security books and all, you will see that AES 128-bit encryption, AES 256-bit encryption, AES 512-bit encryption. So you see all those things. But and it was also believed that it would take about 14 billion years to break a 128-bit encryption, right? Or it would take about 4 trillion years to break the 256-byte encryption. Now, what is the meaning of this trillion and billion years? Is this feasible? So it is feasible in a very short period because of quantum computing, right? I'm not talking about encryption, I'm talking about computing, then I'll come to the encryption part of it. Now, quantum computing it's in multifolds, computing in multifolds. So it takes much smaller time to break any kind of encryption code, what we have already, encryption methods, right? To break any kind of encryption methods, it takes very small time to do that. And already it's all broken. So you see that AES 256 already is a broken algorithm. 512 is already a broken algorithm. So if you look at the trend now, people are strengthening the encryption bits. That is, they're moving towards 1024 bits encryption or 2048 bit encryption kind of thing. So, and it's a cost. It's a cost to the cost from the uh, uh, point of perspective that you need to deploy high-end hardwares, you need to deploy various tools to make sure that your environment is sufficiently protected with higher number of bits of encryption. So in that context, it is really urgent need to shift the encryption method from digital ciphers to quantum encryption, because at least we believe that at this point of time, quantum encryption is not breakable, while digital ciphers have already been broken, right? So that is one need. The other point I wanted to talk about is it's a double-edged sword. So as the world is proceeding towards, you will see that huge investments are being made in quantum computing, right? So as the world is proceeding towards quantum computing, it means that this applications which are using quantum computing will have the ability to pass um, gigabits of data, terabits of data, petabytes of data in few seconds. How is that happening? Because the way the computing is done is in a very different way. So supercomputers are built, they are actually parsing through all the data. So now just let's talk about a small database in our premises, in our environment, which is actually encrypted. How long it takes for this quantum computing to break into this encryption? It's nothing actually. So that means your data, whatever you think it is very sensitive from the business standpoint or from the privacy standpoint, it's all gone. It's all gone. It's open. It's visible for everybody. So as quantum computing investments are increasing, we also need to look at quantum encryption methods to encrypt and safeguard the data. Certainly, it is inevitable. It has to happen. So even Gartner predicts that by mid 2023, we'll all have quantum encryption deployed. We'll have it in place. Now the question is, how do you deploy? We'll touch all these points in detail as we proceed further. How do we deploy them? How do we deploy is like it's a big debate because we have to see a lot of our databases are already encrypted with say AES 256 encryption. We know it's broken, but it's not so simple that you get away with that in overnight, right? Because applications have been built to use this encryption. So you can't get rid of it. So you have to find a way to go with quantum encryption while you slowly move away from the standard digital encryption. So that is an architectural discussion which is being talked about in the word what the cybersecurity world uses for that is uh, crypto agility, right? Crypto agility. That's what people are talking about. Then now let's assume that our environment is ready. We are having everything in place. Is that the end? Do we can we have uh, peaceful sleep? Cybersecurity professionals, can we have a peaceful sleep? Because now we have quantum encryption, we have everything in place. Absolutely no. Answer is no. Because as a CISO, I am also aware that I have to be awake all 24 hours a day. Um, in whatever logical sense it means, because that's how I need to, because anything happens, first person to be questioned is a CISO on the ground. So that is how it is uh, uh, protective or not protective. So I'll also talk about this in detail, especially when I talk about the data classification and how it is coming into the context of cryptography. Okay. Now let's move. Any questions, or should we take the questions in the end? I take that. Okay, I take that. Will take a few minutes to understand cryptography. So why cryptography is required? Net, it is required for us to keep the data confidential, authenticate and authorize only somebody who is actually the owner of the data or who should be accessing the data, right? Not everybody should be accessing the data. Ensure that integrity of data is in place. Why is it so important? Because you will keep this question in mind if you have a question about this integrity part when I explain the Colonial pipes bridge scenario. Now demonstrate that suppose sender is really sent a message. That means, see, there are many times, it's a very common thing which all of you might have seen now, that you get phishing mails, right? You get a mail saying that your salary has been um, uh, debited into this account and click this link to see what is your current latest account balance or whatever. So these things keep coming to our mailbox, even to our official email box. I would say that it doesn't come so much into my Gmail as it comes into my official email box. On a lighter note, it comes and many of our people, they have an urge to click. Like I've seen one of the mails which has come recently. In my recently was it was a mail from CEO's exec assistant saying that he's stuck somewhere and immediately contact him. And he doesn't have the phone, so calling him on this link. Okay, so these kind of messages, we don't know if it's really something which is valid. Should I click? Should I not click? It looks so genuine. Unlike the previous days, in maybe 2 years back, these kind of mails used to have certain characteristics like spelling mistakes or jumbled sentences and all. Nowadays, it's all clean, so it's very hard to make out whether this mail comes from a genuine source or not. So this is actually, it's called repudiation, and that is something which we need to make sure that it doesn't happen. So all these things require some kind of data security and data protection, right? It is not just about data, it is also about various modules of security coming together, such as data classification, access controls, and environment like network segregations, segmentations, I would say, network segmentation. All these things put together form the building block of cybersecurity architecture, which is often missed. And encryption plays a big role in that. If you have heard of SSL encryption and the vulnerabilities around SSL 1.0, it was also very severe few years back, right? Now let's talk, let's stick to the cryptography part of it. Architecture, yes, certainly it's a very big topic. We'll not be able to cover today. Now, what are the methods of cryptography, which is very commonly used? One is secret key encryption, another is public key encryption, another is hash function. Normally, people use hash, especially if you look at your Active Directory, right? You're logging in, your password is stored in Active Directory, and it is all hashed, one-way hashed. So it is not recoverable. Even if I come and steal your password, I won't be able to make out what is it. So it is called one-way hashing. And secret key encryption it's a very traditional way of encryption where I send a message to you and I encrypt the message with the key and I give the key to you so that you can decrypt and read the message. So the key is shared between I and the person who is receiving the message. And it's good. It serves the purpose for two people who trust each other, who know that this key cannot be compromised beyond all those things, right? But the flip side is it's a very tricky thing that I send the key. How do I send the key? Am I sending it through a channel which is vulnerable? Am I sending it, or the person with whom I'm sharing the key, he or she, is it just leaving it open for somebody to access? So it's very subjective. It all depends on these two people who are sharing the key. Public key encryption. That's an interesting concept and it survived for long in the industry, in the cybersecurity space. Public key encryption, right? It is also called PKI. So we'll look into all these three in just a minute's time. Okay. Can you see my screen now, right? So the first one, there are three diagrams here. The first one, it's a symmetric key encryption, which is nothing but the one which I explained, right? When I saw some message, I can answer that later, right? So when there is a message which I'm sending, I'm encrypting, and then the moment I encrypt, it is called ciphertext because it is an encrypted text now. And the person who is on the other side has a private key, has the same key, which he or she uses to decrypt and get the message, that hello message. That is a very simple way of encryption. The other one, so it is a pictorial representation. Now I can also talk about how all these things happen. So in a symmetric key, when I feed the symmetric key of say 100 bits, right? So whatever message I send, it's actually jumbled by 100 bits and it is sent out. So the message is not really hello, hello. So it's like if you can visualize a letter which is put inside an envelope. That envelope is nothing but a symmetric key, and the other person opens it and reads the message. Now, the public key infrastructure is like it has a key pair actually. Normally, it's a combination of public key and a private key. So when I and there are a lot of other things involved here. That there is a key which is issued for every public key. There is a private key issued to individual users. So when I send a message on my Outlook, I send a message and I click that, okay, I want to encrypt this message and I send a message to you. I'm just encrypting with a public key. And then I send a message out. The person who receives it should have the key installed on that particular device, which is a private key for that particular user. Only then the message can be opened and read by that user. So it is a public and private key. It's called asymmetric key pair. That is the second category. So I'm just talking about these three things which I put here. I'm just talking about those three things in the same sequence in this slide. The third one is about hashing. So here is just it's one-way hashing and it's non-recoverable. I always liked it. It's very simple. If the data is lost, it's lost. It's okay. We can regenerate the data. But there is no hassle that okay somebody will come and break it into that easily and all. So hashing is always simple and easy, which I use it many times in my this thing, especially when I deal with directories and lightweight directories or open LDAP kind of structure and all. Okay, now let's get a little deeper into the quantum cryptography. Meanwhile, let me also check if I have any questions related to previous topics. Vyamesh Sharma, I couldn't understand your question. Which message is correct means what exactly you are talking about? Are you referring to the public key or private key? So if I come back to this diagram in the previous slide, right? So here, the first scenario is it's a simple key pair, right? It is. So first scenario is the simple symmetric key encryption, or it is also called secret key encryption. In symmetric key, it is very simple. It's like it may be an example where I uh, create an envelope for my message with say 128 bits. And I know that when I create this particular, I use a particular algorithm to encapsulate my message, and that message will get decapsulated or decrypted by the other person whom I am sending. It is straight one-to-one communication. So there is no way that message goes wrong unless somebody adds. So now a malware or hacker, right? He or she sits here, and instead of my 128 bit, what I'm sending here, in that sequence, that person, the hacker may be pulling out some, say, 10 bits in between and adding another 10 bits. So the person who is receiving my mail will not be able to decrypt. So the message is correct, decryption doesn't happen. But the person here, the hacker who is sitting here, right, on the here, the symmetric, if you can see my arrow, that person is going to steal the message and understand and use it the way it is required for by the hacker. The same thing here also it goes. If it's very simple actually. Symmetric key is very simple and it is easily hackable. In the second scenario, public key scenario, here the private key is very important. So when I'm sending a message to you, uh, you should be having the private key to decrypt that message, right? And if you do not have the private key, you cannot decrypt. Now, that is one scenario. That is where your key is lost. There is a procedure that you have to raise a request for the new key to be generated or previous key to be revoked and all those things. There is a procedure. Now, on the other hand, if you have shared your key or if you have given your laptop access on which the private key is installed to somebody else, then that message is stolen straightforward. So the message is always correct. It is about where whose hands it fall into, right? That is what it is. I'm not sure, Vimesh, if I answered your question, but maybe help me understand with more clarity. I can answer it better, probably. Okay. So now let's quickly come to this topic of our today's discussion. So, few points to note before we get into the deeper of this discussion is we know that why we know about encryption now, the three fundamental types of encryption, and we also know about uh, how those encryption can be broken. It's very simple. You can Google it and break a symmetric encryption. Very simple. For PKI, you will need some little bit of additional work as an end user, but it's all broken. For example, if you log into darknet and pay some money, you can get the script to break anything. So it is all there. So there is no security of data what you are collecting. So if you are collecting, say, my blood group, if you are a lab, right, you are a Apollo clinic in India, or you are like a Fortis hospital chain, and you have my medical records, and it has to be kept very. It's a sensitive data, and it has to be kept very securely. Now, if you are having public infrastructure and this key is compromised, so private key is known to the people who should not know, then the information is lost. It's completely lost. So it can have many adverse effects on me as a patient. It can have adverse effect on the business of the Fortis or Apollo hospital chains. All these things can happen. Classic example, you guys might have heard about the breach in Reddy Labs, right? In last year, mid last year. So Reddy Labs were, this was even a little before Reddy Labs were approved drug manufacturers for Sputnik. It was a little before that. So Reddy Labs had a massive breach, and they had an outage of some 2-3 days. Now, why did this happen? Because they were processing some very sensitive information about COVID, how the COVID demographics look in India, what kind of medicines are working. So clinical trials were happening, research was happening. So all this data, so it is still date. It is not known to the public that what is the amount of data which is lost, but still data is lost. They had an outage of 3+ days. Um, so it's a very sensitive thing. And when they lost this data, it is certainly because of, as what I understand as a professional, it's because of some phishing mail where the employees clicked and they got entire network seized under that malware. So that was what is happening. So it is whatever way they follow for encryption or hashing and all, it is not foolproof. That is the point I want to make actually. So till now we discussed only that much. Now let's talk more about the quantum cryptography mechanisms. So what is a fundamental difference now? So digital is always about algorithms, right? You have mathematical algorithms which actually talk about if so now the communication is nothing but zeros and ones in digital world. When I talk, analog is converted into digital in the blocks of zeros and ones. And when we add another 128 bits or 256 bits of encryption, only the zero and ones are getting jumbled in a specific manner defined by the mathematical algorithm, and it goes and gets made it makes it available to the recipient. Okay, this is the digital encryption. Why it is so easy to break it? Because we know that how these bits which are injected into the regular communication channel can be removed, reversed. So it is easy to decrypt. So in 1968, there were a lot of research happening about how do we change the way we encrypt, right? So there was always a debate between maths and physics. So in physics, then the people with deep knowledge of physics, they said, why don't we use something which talks about the state of the matter, right? That matter can be it ended up being a photon in the end. So because everything is about the state of that particular matter, right? And that how that behaves in a given environment. Because now when you look at electron, or when you look at a proton or photon, all these are light sensitive. Now we are talking physics. Okay, all these are light sensitive, and uh, these are also because when you pass a particular encryption and you pass a particular ray of light in a particular angle, this actually it creates a different behavior of the communication what you're sending. Okay, so what we are doing here is we are actually going to transmit. So we are going to transmit the photons, and then through a polarizer which gives four possible polarizations: vertical, horizontal, oblique, that is 45 degrees left and 45 degrees right. So this is what we are going to do. So now we have two channels here. So you look at uh, So it is called quantum key distribution. So there are a few things which we will talk about it in detail. That is quantum key distribution, quantum random number generator, or true random generator, or pseudo random generator. So there are multiple things which happen in this space, quantum cryptography, right? So here, one is the same text, the hello text. It gets into this encryption. We'll talk more about this encryption in the next slide. Once you choose the encryption, you are actually you are also going to use the quantum state generator. This is nothing but your polarizer. Okay. So you are actually passing the encryption through certain polarizer and then adding it to the communication channel. So the communication can happen on the regular network channel. The quantum state generator, that the orientation, right? This what four colorful blocks, what you see, that's nothing but the orientation. So orientation is shared with the other person, the receiving entity, using the quantum channel. So that is what we will in the future will discuss. Next, when the photons, so here what happens is transmitter sends photons through a polarizer, which gives them one of the four possible polarizations, right? I can randomly choose the polarization. I don't need to choose vertical and let the other person know I'm choosing vertical and this is how it will work for you. So I can randomly choose. The other person can also randomly try all the four options. One of the option will click and it is then it chooses the right way of encryption. So when the photon arrives, the receiver and users, they use beam splitters in order to estimate the polarization of each photon. I will also talk about why this is foolproof, right? So after the transmitter sends all the information, receiver tells the transmitter that beam splitter was used for each photons, and then transmitter compares the sequence and it does the matching and the communication is established. Now, few keywords what you should remember. We'll come back to this slide after we discuss the next one. One is the random number generator, that is this encryption part. Then the QKD, that is a quantum key distribution. That's a whole setup what you see here. Then the polarization and filters, that is the quantum state generator. Then the quantum safe network, that is the whole network. How do you secure the network? And then qubits. So qubits have become very important because now in the regular encryption, you're talking about 128-bit, 256, or 512 kind of thing, right? Bits of encryption. Now, qubit is, it's why it is called qubit, it's because it's nothing but 2 to the power of 2 to the power. So if you say 3 qubits, it is nothing but you're using 8 uh, bits actually. So it's huge actually because we are talking about 50 qubits, which means 2 to the power of 50. That is a number of bits you use for encryption. Sorry. I just want to take this off my screen. Okay. So if you can see my screen, so I have put 2 blocks here. Now let's talk about this and then go back to the previous slide. Okay. So there are 2 QKDs. QKD is nothing but quantum key distribution, right? So we have 2 QKDs and this is the way they communicate. So each QKD has this one, right? It has its own protocol stack, it has its own receiver, it has a key interface, all those things. Now there are 2 parts to it. So one part is about the preparation and transmission. That is what we saw here. This is nothing but preparation and transmission. So this gray blocks are preparation and blue is the transmission. Okay. So preparation and transmission, then you have this, this is nothing but the QKD protocol stack, and you have all these things here, which I will explain. Then you have a transmitter and receiver. So here, so let me just, Okay. So where it starts? It all starts with a VPN or OPC interface. Okay. Now, when we talk about this OPC, right? VPN, it is the boundary from where my communication leaves, right? It may be just a switch, or it may be the boundary of the network into which my laptop is placed. So I'm sending a communication. So in the traditional way, right, the VPN also has the switch and firewall and all those things, if you have read about that. So these switches, which are sitting on the edge, right, edge of the network, they have, so you can fix the quantum Q distribution, K distribution, that QKD blocks are there. Like it's like a network interface card, which will come as just a card, and you can just put it in the regular network switch of maybe you have a Cisco switch or Palo Alto switch or something. You can just place that. It's like an adapter card. That's what you get. So you can just place that card. So once you place that card, so what happens is every message what you are sending out of the network to the designated network. So that message goes through these four steps: sifting, error correlation, privacy amplification, and authentication. So that is a block what I put here, orange color block, right? So every message what is generated goes through this, and the message is ready for, now this is the preparation part. So with this, message is prepared to be sent. So once that is done, then the message is rightly encapsulated with all these things. I will talk about this diagram also. And then it is transmitted through the IP network to another network. So message is transmitted here through the green box, okay, what I have put. So message still goes in the IP network only. Quantum channel is used for sharing the pattern or the quantum keys, okay. That is between device to device. So I spoke about the adapter which sits on the switch of your network. Wherever I'm sending, now hear me out very clearly. Wherever I'm sending, so I'm sending from network 1 to network 2. The network 2 also must have the quantum key distribution adapter in the switch block of their network. So net, if you look at it, it is the communication that's happening between one QKD to another QKD. It's like a dedicated connection, communication that is happening. It doesn't happen outside this, right? So that is how it is. So one is you are actually segregating the physical and logical networks. So you are actually creating a quantum network into which you are sending the data using certain specific quantum patterns and using quantum protocols, or I would say the way certain methods like sifting, error correlation, and all happens. So here in this picture, now QKD node 1 interconnects with the QKD node 2 over a fiber link. Okay. So the optical channel is used here is for the that is this one, quantum channel, right? This is the optical channel. Why it is optical fiber channel? Because it requires a dedicated connection between two QKD adapters. So that is a fiber connect, and the other one is a regular IP network. Now the node 1 and node 2 communicate over the classic IP network. Processor measure the processes and processes all the states of the this thing of the communication. Yes, it is encryption actually. Uh, this one, right? Yeah, it is encryption only. Um, Okay, so it is exactly, I kept it that way because it is not exactly the decryption part of it. It is just a matching part of it, and it is called encryption. Okay, so here in this process, if there is any third party, which is, so let's understand this how it happens here, right? So now somebody is sending a communication, say hello, right? Hello is, so emitter bit value here, if you can see my cursor, hello is nothing but 011101001, some number. Okay, for our discussion, I put this. Now, emitter photon source is something like this. So I spoke about this one. So it is nothing but I choose the photon source. It's nothing but like a light. You can in the physical setup you can see it like a blue light. Okay. So I just use a particular photon source and I just emit the light. So I have the sequence like for 0 I use a vertical arrow, this double-sided arrow. For 1 this is horizontal. For this one it is an oblique thing. So it is randomly generated. It's not that I choose. So when I stream the data and when I choose a photon source, it is randomly generated. Now there is also a receiver filter orientation. So what receiver does is receiver puts a filter. So this filter is nothing but its literal meaning of filter. Okay, when you put so this filter may pass the light in a different based on the orientation. It will pass the light in a specific direction. So if you look at this filter orientation, it is tilted, right? And the straight line, this photon source, yellow light, which is vertical thing, which I pass through this filter, it becomes oblique. The another one, so under one I have the horizontal arrow, and when I put it on through this filter, it remains the same because it is light is straight away going from this one. So there is a particular way of orientation match which happens. So based on that, if you look at the receiver bit value, it varies actually. It varies based on how the receiver receives. Now there is also a shifted key. So shifted key adds on top of it and it helps the receiver to actually assimilate all the number bits and bytes in a specific way. So that is how the message is reconstructed back. Okay. So here this is a reception and measurement. That is exactly I have kept it as encryption only because it is not exactly decrypted, right? It is the reception of the signal and measurement because it is not that just there is just one bit of one stream of data comes in and I get the right measurement where what is the code, how is it encrypted and all. I don't get it. So when there is a stream of data which comes and based on the filter orientation and the photon detector, I will be able to get the message right. Now, what happens? So, all these are photons, right? Now, photons are nothing but photosensitive. They're very sensitive to photo. That is why it's called photon. Photo is nothing but light. So, when you pass them with this particular photon source emitter, right? That is where you are passing the light actually with certain orientation. Now, when you put a filter here, that also make sure that the light, whatever your photon source, whatever you are giving, it is getting detected in a specific way. Now, if I'm the hacker and I'm sitting in between here, the IP network, right? I want to sniff what QKD1 is giving to QKD2. So how do I understand? So I can understand that only by passing light and understand the orientation of the photon. When I pass a light, photon is very sensitive. It changes its orientation, which means the message which is coming to QKD1, it is distorted. So message which is coming to QKD2, it is distorted. So which means QKD2 knows that somebody is eavesdropping or somebody is trying to hack into the message. See, in the whole process, message is not lost, it gets distorted and QKD2 can tell QKD1 to send the message again. So message is never lost in this case. And the hacker doesn't get into the communication of between communication which happens between 1 and 2. So that is how it happens. The only thing is there are many limitations. It's not that this is foolproof. The limitation is this is very sensitive to light. So you have to ensure that entire communication, right, of the message, it should not be exposed out in bright light because then the photon changes its orientation and the message gets distorted. So, but good point here is I see some questions. I'm tempted to answer that. I think I will do that in a bit. Okay. So it's not how long, I see this question, how long a bit stream should be used, right? It's not a bit, it's not that you have a length of the bit stream. So at present, I'll tell you, at present, the uh, maximum length you can go is 50 qubits. Okay, 50 qubit is 2 to the power of 50. That is the length you can go. But do you, that is what is, which is done by Honeywell and IBM also. So they are the vendors for this. I mean, there are many companies which have invested into this. IBM, Microsoft, and Honeywell. They are into big time. They have invested big time into this. So 50 qubit is the maximum length of the key available now. Okay. I don't know if I made it very clear. So I'm just taking one more small attempt on the QKD stack. Okay. So when the data comes, first is the data gets sifted, right? So the right data gets it sifted and it goes into the error correlation, error correction. So if there are any errors, so there are possibilities of error based on the photon source and the orientation and all. So the error gets corrected, then the privacy application happens, and then authentication happens. So authenticated bits only get into the communication channel. So all these are done by a box. So when I say QKD, right, it is nothing but a box actually. It's like a hardware device which can do all these things. So which can emit certain uh, this one, which it's a hardware device to generate your number, QRNG, that is a random number generation. And it also does the photon. So QKT does both of them. So it does a hardware number generation, and it also gives the state, it generates the state for that communication. So these are the two things it does. So all these five things which I have put, or four things which I have put here, QKD, it's a box. So it is just that in a physical setup, you just have that adapter on the switch, okay? And you have a box in your setup. That is all you need to do. It's as simple as it gets complicated only when you are trying to understand what goes into this, because it takes some time to understand how this filter orientation happens. That's the only challenge sometimes. Otherwise, it's very easy topic to speak about. Okay. Now, with this background, any questions on this? Let me just check for a question now. For a minute. I have many questions, so I'll just take few questions and then move forward. Okay, so the question like public is the same as Microsoft is like Microsoft Office file? No. So public keys are like, if you know, these keys are there are certificate authorities, like you can talk about Verizon, for example, VeriSign. Okay, so VeriSign issues certificates. So you can buy those certificates and then you can have. So there is a concept of certifying authority, registration authority. A lot of these things are there. PKI infrastructure, right? And you can buy those certificates and you can have them. Your Microsoft also gives this. So Microsoft has Active Directory. In Active Directory, there is a concept called Kerberos. So Kerberos also, you can, using Kerberos, you can set up your public key infrastructure. You can issue the certificates to each and every user and make sure that this entire PKI infrastructure is set up. So it is not Office, it is from Microsoft. Active Directory and Kerberos is the thing about public key. And Active Directory also has hashing. So that is how the user passwords are stored in Active Directory. So when you send the doc file, you can use private key for anything. When you send a doc file or PPT or any of those, whatever you send from your Outlook, right? You can set, or even if you are doing a file sharing. using network file sharing. You can use the public and private key to make sure that your files are secure. No, at present, so the next question is from Janvi. At present, does still secret key encryption has scope compared to public key and hash function? No, actually, very few people use it. Mostly, it is used in very few people. Mostly, people avoid using that. If they're using it, is mostly in schools and all, where they don't want to get into the hazards of public key, PK infrastructure, and children are using a simple document which is not critical from data standpoint or privacy standpoint. They use symmetric keys as an academic purpose, but not otherwise.
Hello, Miss Sarita. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that the topic is very interesting and we have loads of questions here, but can we just dedicate the Q&A or the questions under the Q&A part so
Yes.
we can answer all the questions later on during our question and answer?
Sure.
You may continue, please. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the use cases. Okay, common use cases where it will benefit with deployment of quantum, at least in the current scenario. Going further, I think it will be the normal scenario where we all talk about quantum encryption. Simple is offsite backup. So offsite backup means what? So we have the whole setup, right? Let's talk about the example of say Citibank. So Citibank does millions of transactions, millions of dollars of transactions in India every day, or maybe it's billions, I would say. And their entire business data should be backed up within their premise and also outside their premise. So that is a regulatory requirement. So when they do an offsite backup, which means they have a setup somewhere else where they just send all this data and for a backup, and it is backed up and stored there, right? So in such scenarios, it is very important that this data is backed up in a very secure way, and this is where quantum encryption helps a lot. So because it's almost foolproof at this point of time. Then data protection within the enterprise network. So that is where let's take an example of say this one. Hero Honda, right? A two-wheeler community. So they have their own designs, Hero Motor Power, for example. They have their very specific designs coming up, which is very crucial from the business standpoint, and they can't let go their designs to be leaked in public. It's their core IP. So within the R&D network and the design section, they can have QKD installed so that whatever they're communicating within that environment will be there within that environment. It's not outside. Similarly, we can talk about critical infrastructure or security, server, backbone protection and all. So there are many of these scenarios. Government and defense, they're already using it. Especially, I'm aware of that they've been using it in India at least. And whatever I read on the net, China has advanced. They are way ahead in this quantum encryption, and they use it for every government and defense activities. What they do, they're very advanced. In fact, they have laid quantum QKD infrastructure for 20,000. 20,000 kilometer distance is what they have laid already. That is way ahead of US or India or any other country. I've also put few architecture, which I will the deployment scenarios I would call, and I will explain them in quick few minutes. I know we are running out of time. So we have this. One is a simple QKD linked encryptor, which we have been talking about it so far, right? All these boxes looking alike, they are all QKD boxes. So you have two QKD box here, two here, so it is all done. So it's a very simple environment, which exactly what we spoke about earlier. Now we have one more. This is for enterprise network, which I was also talking about between bank. If you're doing it between bank, various branches you have and data center. So it is between data center and the branch. So all these rectangular small boxes which you see, which have that blue and red link together, they are the QKD boxes. Okay. So any data, so that means you are actually securing the data within here. And if data center 1 and data center 2 has to talk, you have the QKD infrastructure there also. Then you have the third one is the WAN link. This is especially where we talk about the regular so the connection which I was talking about, that offsite backup, right? That comes into picture with the WAN using single QKD network. So here it is like offsite backup is happening. The data is going outside the network, but you are making sure that your data is secure because you have deployed a QKD setup in your offsite environment. Here also you are securing a key server with the QKD distribution channel. Then there is something very specific to the factory setup. So this is what we refer to the factory setup. Like Hero Motor, what I was taking an example, right? So within you have various sites, maybe the production site, factory, you have the corporate site, sales sites, and all. So you have various sites, and you have the QKD infrastructure which is supporting various sites. So this network is only QKD network. It is not your WAN or anything. It is like a data center which is having only QKD. Okay, these are some of the examples of how you can deploy. Now there are various ways to connect also, like you can have point-to-point, quantum, the secure data network, mesh network and all, which we explained here. So for example, this is a mesh, then this is the QKD data center kind of thing. This is point-to-point. So all these are covered here. So on-premise deployments are not difficult. You can have those adapter kind of devices which can be housed onto your Cisco or Palo Alto core switches or even Juniper core switches and all. So you can have that. SaaS model also is available. There are certain Switzerland companies which are again way ahead. I think last 20 plus years they've been doing a lot of work in this quantum encryption and quantum computing. They have this service where they give quantum computing and quantum encryption as a service. So entropy as a service is one of the service what they're giving. So we can try to. It is very easy. SaaS model is easy where you don't have to invest. You have to just pay as you go kind of, pay as you use kind of model. Quick one. Jennifer, would I have time for this one? I just wanted to explain this.
Yes, please.
I'll take a short time. So I wanted to talk about this Colonial pipes case, which is being talked about in every press and other places. So here, why QKD becomes very important, right? So here, the network is something like this today. So they have normally this is how the industrial networks are, like they are termed from layer 0 to layer 5. In layer 0, we have sensors which actually sense what's happening in the network, and then they give it to the layer 1 is nothing but control systems. So they give it to the control system. Then layer 2 is where the human machine interfaces, that is HMI, human machine interfaces are there. And layer 3 is where actual operations happen. So layer up to layer 1, 0, 1 and 1, it is all machine layer. There is no human actually. Layer 2, it's a mix of human and machines. Layer 3 is actually, it's about operations, the control part of it, right? So the hackers, and layer 4 is the enterprise network, the network with which we sit actually, with IT and all the Outlook, internet, everything. Layer up to layer 3, certainly layer up to layer 2, internet is minimal. Layer 3 is again, it is restricted use of internet. 4 and 5, it's normal, right? The first intrusion happened in Colonial pipeline case. So Colonial pipeline, a big quick background is they supply gasoline in the US West Coast from New Jersey to Texas. So So this is a line. It's about, they have, I think, about 500 miles or something is the length of the pipe, and they supply about 8.5 million gallons of gasoline every day on this pipe. So it's a very critical setup actually. That is where it was targeted. Now in this setup, the first they targeted the operations system. So here apparently they were using a very simple AES 128-bit kind of encryption here on this machine, and they did not. It was just a user ID password login onto this machine, and it was very easy to break. So these guys, hackers, they just found this machine. The way they found is also very interesting. They sent a mail with a malicious link, and they got hold of this machine by the person who was administrator. He or she clicked on that, and then the uh, virus was dropped onto that machine, and that is where it started spreading. And even it was having encryption, that did not matter, because these hackers, they had that code to break that 128-bit encryption. So within few days, they just transferred all the data from these operations, which is a very critical layer. They transferred all the data. At least public announcement which Colonial pipes have made is about 100 GB of data is lost. But I'm not sure, because that is there is always a difference between disclosure and actual. So that data is lost, and they had taken control. What they have done is they had, so I have put the steps here what they did. So what they did is they actually, once they landed on the server, they dropped the malware code there, because using that phishing this thing. Then it's nothing but a script actually. So what it does is, first it broke all the encryption. Second is it identified all the critical servers. Then it started identifying which critical services are running and where it is running, on what machine it is running. And this configuration files on the server were all encrypted with AES 128. This malware had a algorithm to decrypt all these configuration files. So this is where the big damage happened. If that is so simple as that, right? Then once it decrypted configuration files, it actually started doing the service restart, stop kind of thing. Then it created a mutation, mutation network, and then created a network topology and machine statistics. Which server is doing what server is doing the load, taking higher load in the evening times, and all those things. It's all about, because it's about the control of gasoline flow from New Jersey to Texas, right? So this malware collected all the information about how the gasoline flow is controlled, what kind of operations happen, everything, and what are the critical systems in that. So once it is done, it actually started getting into the servers, critical servers, and encrypting the servers. Then it deleted all so whenever malware operates, it also creates a copy for itself. So normally the typical malware, right, like Urbanax or anything, what it does is, once it does the job what it wants, like copying the data or moving the data outside the network, when it does all these things, it also creates a copy, because it can't do all these activities real time. It creates a copy. Whenever there is a server downtime or something, it identifies that time window in which it can quickly move all the data outside the network, and it does. So this malware also, it removed all the copies to make sure that there is no trace. Nobody could realize that there is a malware in the network. And after doing that, it encrypted the whole files and volumes and placed a demand for ransomware. So that is the recent thing. You can just search for this one, Colonial pipeline. You can get all the details. And when you get the details, if you can relate to what I'm saying, then it will be very interesting for you to understand this. So this is what I had. I have, I don't know if I have, I think I overshot the time by 1 hour also, by 15 minutes also.
Saritha, a lot of questions are there in the chat box. If you can see and answer all those.
Yeah, okay. So should I answer? Can I take that extra time to answer?
Yes, we can proceed to the question and answer if you're ready.
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so thank you with that. Thank you for that, Miss Sarita, for the very insightful and very interesting talk. And actually, I've not undergone a formal training in this topic, but I have loads of takeaway. And aside, of course, from learning the overview of encryption and including algorithms involved, and reason why we need to shift from to quantum encryption, and it's also very timely, no, because of the recent cyber attack in U.S. gas pipeline. And because we also have so many questions and some were already addressed by you during the presentation, I believe we also have some list here. The first one on my list is how does the quantum channel maintain security and prevent eavesdropping?
So it's a very simple mechanism because it's all photon based and photons are sensitive to light. If I'm sending a communication to person B and C is eavesdropping, person C has to pass light to understand the photon behavior. Um, and the moment there is a light on that particular photon, it disorients. So it cannot, so this eavesdropping is almost impossible.
Okay. Another one here is could you share any personal experience, if you may have, breaking ciphers, either based on current algorithms or state-of-the-art AES, DES, WPA?
So officially, I have not broken anything, but for my interest, I have tried. I have not tried big ones also. I've tried only 128 bits, and it's not difficult.
Okay. I hope.
Where I have used this knowledge is to understand the footprint of. So I was working for one of my. I was on a project about 4 years back, and I saw that the project team had deployed load balancers straight from with the factory settings, and it was there available on the internet because the load balancers, when they're connected, they publish the IP, they publish themselves to the internet. So immediately it was getting hacked. So when I and it was getting hacked, and I also saw that it was way before the WannaCry kind of malwares, which were like ransomwares. So this was about 4 years back. So when I saw that it was also this malware was trying to break the existing 128 bit encryption on the servers in that data center, and it was exfiltrating the data out of the network. So that is where immediately we sandboxed the server, and we also tried. See, for us also, it is very important that we get the traces of this malware because that helps us to understand how it behaves. So we picked up these malware scripts, and then we started, or I would say that reverse engineering of this malware. That is where we figured out that it was using this 128 bit encryption breaker in that. So that is where that is only the one incidence where I could work on this, but otherwise I've not worked on that.
Yeah, we really appreciate your sharing with us your personal experience with the system. And I also have here a question about, since there is no single photon generator, so how do we overcome this problem in practical situation for QKD?
So at this point, it is still dependent on the vendors. So there are many manufacturers of QKDs. So it depends on the manufacturer. For example, if I go with, say, there is a QKD company in Bangalore. It's called Colonial Labs. So if I go with their QKD device, I will not be able to get something from IDQ from Switzerland because they don't work together. So I have to have the QKDs from the same vendor, and then I have to set up the network. That is a limitation today. As of today.
Okay, probably will be the last question, since I believe most of the questions in the chat box a while ago were already answered by you. So we have here the question, where is the ciphertext, and could you please show what channel the keys take to travel in the next slide?
So in my diagram, what I showed, I had two channels. I think it was slide 6 and 7. I had two channels actually. One channel was very clearly written as IP network. Another was written as quantum channel, that is QC. So all the QKD connects to the other QKD for the key and random number, this one, right? It's all done through QC, that's a quantum channel. Once it is encrypted, then it goes through the IP network. So there are two different paths actually. That is where I also mentioned about having the FiberNet connection between two QKD devices.
Okay, maybe due to time constraint, so if your question are not picked, maybe we can ask our speaker to just answer the remaining questions if possible. But in the meantime, that would be the last. And I know that you're all equally excited to learn more about the topic, but of course we have we are running out of time. So maybe to give our vote of thanks to our distinguished speakers. By the way, thank you very much. Let me call on our R10 treasurer, Dr. R. Jadeda.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Jennifer. Greetings to all the participants of R10 Talk. On behalf of R10, I thank Madam Saritha on sharing insightful talk on cybersecurity, which I'm sure each of the participants will have benefits. I would also like to thank IEEE Region 10 Professional Activity Committee, Industry Relations Committee, Women's in Engineering WI Committee, Young Professional Committee, and Students Activity Committee for organizing and engaging the participants, which will be useful throughout academic and through their professional career. It's a very good initiative of Region 10. All committee members, they come forward and they have taken initiative for academicians as well as for professionals, those who are working in the industry. Once again, thank you all participants, and have a great weekend. Thank you on behalf of Region 10.
Thank you, Dr. Jadeda. May we ask all the R10 Talk webinar team to turn on their cameras for our photo op.
I request all the panelists to turn on the video for a group photo. On a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. One more. On a count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you once again, Ms. Saritha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sanjay sir.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
sir.
Thank you, Saritha madam.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
madam.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prakash ji, Lohana sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can we project the slide for our next?
Thank you, Jadeja ji. Thank you very much.
So we
Thank
can
you very much, sir. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, can we show the next slide for our next webinar? Yeah, you can reach us through all this, through our Okay, so also we take this opportunity to invite everyone to our upcoming webinar on June 26th about professional ethics and getting ahead. So all right, once again, our heartfelt thanks to Ms. Saritha for gracing our fourth R10 Talk, and to all the participants. Looking forward to see you again on our fifth R10 Talk this June 26th, and kudos to the R10 Talk team for the amazing job. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Jadeja ji, Prakash ji.
Okay,
Thank you,
Sanjay ji. Thank you.
Thank you, Gupta Jasper. and Thank you, Jason. everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.